Smoke curled lazily from the shattered hull of the shuttle, its silver skin half swallowed by the turquoise sands of Castor. 9. Commander Rian Holt sat against the twisted frame, one arm wrapped in a torn pressure sleeve, eyes fixed on the horizon where the lake met a sky too green to trust. The air was thin, metallic. Every breath scraped his throat like powdered glass. His survival pack contained one ration, half a power cell, and a broken transmitter that coughed static more than signal. He'd already tried it 3 times. No one was coming. He'd crashed before, once on Titan's shadow fields, but this time there was no base nearby, no backup beacon, no squadron to blame. Just him and a planet that wanted him gone. He tore another strip from his sleeve, binding the shallow burn across his forearm. The skin underneath looked strange, as if the planet's air had stained it faintly blue. He told himself it was just the light. A ripple drew his gaze to the lake. The water glowed faintly in the dusk, thick with organisms that shimmered when disturbed. Something moved beneath its surface, a large, deliberate movement. Rian froze, hand hovering near his sidearm. He waited, counted the seconds. Then the motion stilled. Only the slow lap of alien tide remained. He turned back to scavenging what he could from the shuttle. A cracked ration pod, a handful of thermal tape, a data slate with one corner blackened. Nothing that could get him off-world. The night winds were already sharpening. The planet's temperature dropped hard once its smaller sun vanished. He'd have to find shelter before the cold set his lungs on fire. That was when he heard it, a sharp, strangled yelp cutting across the hum of the wind. It was high-pitched, desperate, almost human. He straightened, scanning the shoreline. The sound came again, from near the lake's edge, then a wet splash followed by silence. Instinct overrode logic. He jogged toward the sound, boots sinking into spongy ground that oozed faint light with every step. The smell of brine thickened. As he reached the waterline, he saw movement, a creature thrashing weakly in the shallows, half submerged in dark sludge. It looked like a small animal, fur-matted with phosphorescent streaks. Each motion dragged it deeper, the mud swallowing it inch by inch. Rian hesitated. Everything in his training told him to stay back. Castor 9's wildlife wasn't documented. For all he knew, the thing could carry venom, or worse, lure predators. Yet the sound it made, raw, terrified, bypassed all reasoning. He dropped his pack, tossed his weapon onto the sand, and stepped forward. The ground gave instantly. The first step sank him to the knee, the second to the thigh. Acidic bubbles hissed around his boots, eating at the reinforced plating. Pain shot up his leg as the outer layer of his suit burned through. He cursed, lunging forward before the muck could take him too. His gloved hands found the creature's scruff, soft, wet fur underlaid by lean muscle. It struggled, weak but frantic. "Easy," he muttered, though he knew it couldn't understand him. He heaved, pulling until the suction broke with a sickening slurp. Both tumbled backward onto firmer sand, gasping. The stench of the mud clung to his armor. His palms stung where it had eaten through the glove fabric. The creature lay beside him, trembling. It was about the size of a Terran wolf pup but built for a different gravity, limbs longer, fur interlaced with faintly glowing threads. Its eyes opened, twin pupils contracting into slits. They weren't mindless eyes. They were aware, studying him. Rian sat there, breathing hard, waiting for it to bolt. Instead, it shivered and let out a small, rasping whine. Carefully, he reached into his pack and retrieved a canteen. When he tilted it, the creature sniffed, hesitated, then lapped at the water. It drank greedily until the last drop vanished. He almost laughed. "You're welcome," he murmured, voice hoarse. It tilted its head, as if listening. Then its gaze shifted toward the treeline behind him, pupils widening. Rian followed its stare. In the dim, he saw impressions in the sand, massive paw prints, too large to belong to the small thing beside him. The tracks were fresh, leading into the forest, but stopping short of the open beach. He scanned the dark. Nothing moved, but every instinct screamed that something was watching. Slowly, he reached for his weapon. The pup, He couldn't help but think of it as that, pressed closer to his leg, for bristling, emitting a low hum instead of a growl. The sound vibrated faintly through the sand, unsettling and almost melodic. Then silence. The feeling of being watched faded, but not the tension. Rian gathered some dry driftwood and sparked his suit's pilot light. A small fire caught, sending golden flecks into the night air. The pup watched, eyes reflecting orange and green. When he tore a ration bar in half and placed it on the ground, it sniffed, then cautiously ate. He leaned back against a rock, exhaustion settling like lead. "Guess it's just you and me, huh?" The creature made that humming noise again. Lower this time, steady. The sound was oddly comforting, a soft rhythm beneath the wind's whistle. Hours passed. The twin moons rose, painting the lake in silver blue. Rian's eyelids grew heavy, though he forced himself to stay alert. Somewhere in the distance he heard it, the answering calls. Long, mournful howls that rolled across the water. The pup's ears twitched. It rose slightly, body tensing. "Your family," he whispered. The howls came again, closer now. A chorus, 6, maybe 7 voices blending in layered tones that didn't sound entirely animal. The pup whined softly, torn between instinct and fear. Rian gripped his weapon, scanning the dark shore. The forest edge glowed faintly with movement, shifting silhouettes too large, too smooth to be mere beasts. His pulse quickened. Whatever these things were, they were coming. He thought of retreating to the shuttle, but the distance was too great. He could only wait. The pup pressed itself against him, trembling. He looked down at it, then out at the lake again. The shapes had stopped moving. They lingered just beyond the reach of the firelight, eyes flickering with reflected flame. Watching. Measuring. Rian tightened his grip on the weapon, forcing calm into his breath. "If you're gonna come," he muttered under his breath, "come." But they didn't. Not yet. Instead, the lead silhouette lowered its head and let out a single, deep hum, so low it vibrated through the sand beneath him. The pup answered with a faint echo. The sound passed between them like a pulse, resonant and wordless. Then, as quietly as they'd appeared, the shapes withdrew into the forest. The pup exhaled sharply, curling beside him again. Rian stared into the fire until its flames dimmed. The air had turned colder, but he barely felt it. He glanced once more at the treeline where the watchers had vanished, the faint glow of their eyes still haunting the dark. He didn't know if he'd just saved an animal or started something much larger. When the first light of dawn touched the horizon, he noticed the prints again, fresh, circling his camp. Not a single one crossed the boundary of the fire. Whatever they were, they'd chosen to wait. By morning, the mist over the lake had turned to thin ribbons of light that clung to the water like restless ghosts. Rian crouched near the remains of his fire, feeding it the last of the dry driftwood. The pup, he still refused to call it anything else, was gone. The faint trail of its glowing footprints led toward the trees, and though part of him felt relief, another part felt a hollow absence he couldn't quite justify. He told himself it was better this way. He'd saved it, and now it was back where it belonged. Still, he kept glancing toward the forest, half expecting it to return. He packed what little remained of his supplies and ran another diagnostic on his beacon. The readout flickered between signals, static-laden but alive. It might attract a ship, mercenaries, scavengers, maybe even rescue. He had no way of knowing who would answer first. His arm ached from the burns, and the acidic mud had eaten through 2 layers of his boots. Every step back toward the shuttle felt heavier than the last. That was when he felt it again, the silence. Not the natural kind that comes when wind dies, but a deliberate stillness, as though the air itself was waiting. He froze. The forest was dense, alien flora spiraling upward like glassy ribs, their translucent bark catching faint light. From between them came movement, shadows sliding through shadows. Rian drew his weapon. His suit's visor auto-adjusted, highlighting 6 heat signatures. Large. Quadrupeds. The same figures from the night before. They emerged without sound, as though the forest had exhaled them. 6 massive forms, pelts rippling with bioluminescent veins that shifted colors like liquid metal. Their eyes gleamed with a layered intelligence, something cold but not cruel. At their center stood the pup, smaller but alive, its head low and ears drawn back. Rian felt his heart hammer against his ribs. "You brought friends," he muttered under his breath. The largest of the creatures, the alpha, unmistakable, stepped forward. It was enormous, towering above him even on all fours, its mane alive with faint energy. Its gaze locked with his, unwavering. The pack fanned out around him in a half-circle, enclosing the beach. Not attacking. Not retreating. Simply waiting. Rian slowly raised his free hand, palm outward. "I'm not looking for trouble," he said quietly, though his voice trembled. The alpha tilted its head, nostrils flaring. Then it made a sound, a low, resonant hum that rippled through the sand beneath Rian's boots. The vibration wasn't random. It had pattern, cadence, almost rhythm. The others joined in, their tones overlapping in harmonic layers until the air itself seemed to shimmer. Rian's suit responded before he could. His HUD flickered, translating fragments of electromagnetic interference. The frequency matched a communication band. Not random noise. Intentional signal. He watched in disbelief as the resonance graph stabilized into a pattern that looked eerily similar to language. He lowered his weapon slightly, and the pup moved closer, limping toward him on uncertain legs. It stopped just short of his knee, lifted its head, and made a soft sound halfway between a purr and a hum. The alpha followed, closing the distance until Rian could feel the creature's breath against his chest plate. He held still, every muscle locked. The alpha leaned closer, its massive eyes reflecting both him and the fire behind. Then it exhaled a short, deep tone. The pup echoed it, and Rian's wrist console flickered once more, flashing a single translated word before cutting out. Bond. Rian swallowed hard. "You've got to be kidding me." The alpha stepped back and gave a low call. The pack shifted, almost as one, their formation breaking to encircle the small fire. One of them dropped the carcass of some reptilian creature, a fresh kill. They laid it between Rian and the flames, then all eyes turned to him. A peace offering. He didn't move for a long time, unsure whether to laugh or recoil. Then he crouched, reached for the carcass, and nodded. "All right," he murmured. "Truce accepted." The alpha watched him closely, then gave a sharp, curt motion of its head. The pack dispersed slightly, lowering themselves onto the sand in what could only be described as rest. The pup remained nearest to him, still humming softly. The strangest thing was how natural it felt, this uneasy coexistence. Rian had spent months alone on long patrol routes, talking to stars that never answered. Now, surrounded by creatures that shouldn't understand him but somehow did, the silence felt less like isolation and more like presence. He tried to distract himself by adjusting the beacon again. The signal pulsed faintly, stronger than before. If he could align it with a satellite path, he might reach orbit within the day. Yet as he worked, his visor flickered once more. This time the interference came from above, not his own signal. A sharp tone cut through the static. His blood ran cold, human encryption. Not a rescue frequency. A mercenary band. Unregistered signal detected on Castor 9, came the faint, distorted voice. Claim jump protocol initiated. Scrub the site. He cursed under his breath, eyes scanning the sky. A shadow passed across the clouds, the distant silhouette of a dropship breaking atmosphere. Its engines burned amber, leaving trails that split the horizon. They were coming fast. The wolves reacted instantly. The alpha's fur rose in silver waves. Its pack stood, low growls, no, vibrations, rolling through the sand. The pup pressed against Rian's leg, trembling. He realized they thought it was his doing. The beacon. The fire. The noise. He turned to the alpha, shaking his head. "Not me," he said quickly, voice sharp. "They're not my people. They'll kill anything that moves." The alpha stared at him for what felt like an eternity. Then it stepped forward again, lowering its head until its snout brushed his chest plate. The deep hum returned, longer this time, resonating so powerfully that Rian's visor glitched and displayed a single translated phrase, together or none. He didn't need more explanation. The dropship's engine screamed overhead, sand and light scattering in their wake. Rian grabbed his weapon, checked the charge, half depleted. The pack turned toward the forest, positioning themselves between him and the open beach. They weren't running. They were defending him. The absurdity hit him like a jolt. Hours ago, he'd been ready to shoot them on sight. Now he was about to fight alongside them against his own kind. He caught the pup's gaze once more. It blinked slowly, almost reassuringly. The alpha let out a short, commanding bark, a sharp tone that rippled through the others. They answered in unison, harmonics rising like a chorus. The ground itself seemed to pulse with their resonance. Rian tightened his grip on the rifle and looked toward the descending ship. "All right," he whispered, half to himself, half to them. "Let's see if they can handle a little teamwork." Above, the mercenary vessel split open like an iron flower, deploying drones that glimmered in the dim light. The first one dove, scanning for heat signatures. It caught both man and wolf in the same beam. Rian braced for fire. But before the drone could react, the alpha lunged. Its claws met metal with a scream of sparks, tearing the machine apart midair. The others followed, shadows of silver fury. The battle had begun, and Rian realized with a strange, defiant calm that his survival, perhaps even his species' reputation, now rested. The first explosion tore open the shoreline like thunder trapped in metal. Sand and glassy soil erupted skyward, scattering fragments that glowed faintly as they fell. Rian threw himself flat behind a ridge, the impact shuddering through his ribs. The wolves moved faster, fluid blurs of light and muscle, darting between bursts of plasma fire that scorched the beach. The mercenary drones swept low, engines whining with predatory precision, scanning for heat and movement. Rian gritted his teeth, raising his rifle. "You want something alive?" he muttered, lining up a shot. "Come and earn it." His bolt struck a drone mid-flight, the shell imploding into molten shrapnel that hissed as it hit the water. Two more replaced it instantly, their optics turning toward the source. Before they could fire, the alpha launched upward in an impossible leap, its claws hooking into the drone's chassis. The machine twisted, whining under the assault as the creature's jaws tore through its armored plating. Sparks burst in a halo around the wolf's luminous form before both crashed into the surf. The others followed, moving like soldiers, no wasted motion, no chaos. They coordinated with eerie precision, using harmonics to communicate across the battlefield. The sound wasn't noise but command, a language of vibration and pitch. Even amid the destruction, it carried something deliberate, almost orchestral. Rian's visor flickered as the sound waves interfered with his HUD again. A faint translation pulse emerged, partial words flickering across the display. Defend, shield, protect the bond. The pup darted past him, growling low, its eyes bright with the same pale fire as the alpha's. The mercenary ship loomed above, casting its shadow like an omen. Through the flickering haze, Rian spotted a human silhouette on the deck, a man in an exosuit, directing the drones with hand signals. It hit him then. They weren't scavengers by chance. They were here for something. His distress beacon hadn't just broadcast his position, it had pinged the planet's biosphere as a potential resource. The wolves weren't the only ones being hunted. A beam seared the sand beside him, heat rolling across his armor. He ducked low, crawling behind a jut of stone. "They're trying to capture them," he said under his breath, though there was no one to hear him but the wolves. "Not kill, Sample." The alpha returned from the waterline, its silver pelt streaked with fluid that glowed brighter with every breath. It limped slightly, but stood tall. Rian felt a strange pang of respect, not pity, but recognition. The creature looked at him, eyes reflecting firelight and data readouts alike. Then came the hum again, low, deep, resonating through his armor like a heartbeat. His visor translated fragments. One. Together. He didn't know what that meant until the alpha placed itself directly in front of him, forming a barrier between man and ship. The drones adjusted formation, focusing their fire on the Alpha's glow. Rian swore and broke cover, shooting down two before they could fire. "No," he shouted, voice raw over the noise. "You don't get to do this alone." The wolf turned its head, meeting his gaze. For a heartbeat, the world seemed to still. The chaos, the noise, the heat, all fading into a strange, shared understanding. Then it gave a single, sharp hum that rattled his teeth and surged forward. The drones reacted, swarming like locusts. Rian sprinted after, firing until his rifle's charge whined empty. He hurled it aside, drawing the emergency plasma cutter from his belt. The air filled with ozone and smoke, light flaring and dying in bursts. Around him, the pack fought like a living storm, their movements synchronized to a rhythm he could almost feel beneath his skin. Something in the sound began to change. The harmonics deepened, the resonance growing strong enough to distort the light itself. His suit sensors spiked, warning of electromagnetic overload. The wolves were channeling energy, drawing it from the planet. The ground beneath them vibrated, as if responding in kind. The mercenary ship tried to ascend, engines whining, but its systems faltered under the interference. Rian watched as the Alpha reared back, letting out a single, pure note that cut through everything: sound, static, thought. The planet answered. A surge of luminous energy erupted from the lake, striking the ship's hull with the force of a tidal wave. Circuits screamed and failed. The ship split open, spilling burning fragments into the sky. One of the wrecked drones exploded nearby, knocking Rian backward. His visor cracked. Static filled his ears. He hit the sand hard, every breath a knife. When the world came back into focus, the battlefield was silent. The ship had fallen, half submerged in the lake, flames reflected on its rippling surface. The wolves stood amid the wreckage, their bodies dimmer now, drained. The pup limped toward Rian, nosing his arm with a soft, questioning sound. "I'm still here," he rasped. He forced himself upright, every muscle screaming. His arm throbbed, blood and mud streaked his armor. The Alpha approached slowly, each step deliberate. The hum that came from its chest this time wasn't a command, but something quieter. A tone of mourning, or gratitude. Rian met its gaze, exhaustion giving way to clarity. "You knew they'd come," he said softly. "You were defending more than yourselves." The wolf tilted its head, and his visor translated the faintest signal. "She calls. Protect her." He frowned, looking toward the lake. The phrase repeated, stronger this time, until the water began to ripple outward in concentric rings. Bioluminescent currents stirred beneath the surface, swirling in patterns too precise to be random. It wasn't just water. The entire ecosystem was reacting, alive, conscious. He whispered. "The planet." The Alpha stepped closer and pressed its forehead lightly to his chest plate. The contact triggered a pulse through his armor, a shock that cascaded into every nerve. His suit screamed warnings before going dark completely. He fell to one knee, gasping, the world spinning around him. Images, not his own, flashed behind his eyes, a network of roots glowing beneath the ground, the pulse of the planet's magnetic core, the wolves as its guardians, and something vast and ancient watching through them. He felt their history in a rush: birth, decay, renewal, all woven into harmonic resonance. He saw himself reflected within that web, a flicker of foreign life now intertwined with theirs. The vision faded as quickly as it came. He collapsed forward, hands sinking into warm sand. When he lifted his head, the wolves had surrounded him in a wide circle. The Alpha lowered itself beside him, its great eyes burning like twin suns. The pup nudged his shoulder gently, and he felt a strange peace spread through him, a clarity that dulled the pain, steadied his breath. Above them, the last fragments of the mercenary ship burned out of orbit, leaving trails of fire that faded into stars. Rian looked at the wolves, at the rippling lake beyond, and realized the truth that had been whispering at the edge of his mind since the day he'd pulled that pup from the mud. This wasn't coincidence. The planet had called him here, and through him it had reached something it needed: understanding. He tried to speak, but the alpha's hum silenced hid. Rian awoke in silence, so absolute it felt sacred. The air was thick with faint light, not from any sun but from the ground itself, a living radiance that pulsed in time with his heartbeat. He was no longer on the beach. He lay on a vast plain of translucent stone, veined with rivers of energy flowing beneath the surface like molten glass. Gravity felt different here, gentler, uncertain. His wounds no longer burned, though the memory of pain clung to him like an echo. The wolves stood in a wide circle around him. Their forms shimmered faintly, edges bending and reforming, no longer entirely solid. The pup sat nearest to his head, watching with solemn eyes. When it exhaled, faint motes of blue light drifted upward, dissolving into the air. Rian tried to speak, but the sound that came out was swallowed by the strange quiet. Then a hum rose, not from the wolves, but from beneath him. The ground itself was singing. The frequency vibrated through his bones, through the remnants of his suit, through every thought that tried to take shape. The alpha stepped forward, its luminous mane flickering like fire beneath water. Its eyes held him, and within them, Rian saw movement, stars, storms, memories not his own. He understood then that this was no dream. The planet had drawn him into its consciousness. He felt it, a vast, collective awareness spanning every root, every drop of water, every living thing. The wolves were not creatures of it. They were extensions of it, guardians and translators. When the alpha's hum deepened, his mind received meaning rather than sound. "You are seen." The words formed not in his ears, but in his thoughts, clear and resonant. He swallowed, still disoriented. "What do you want from me?" he asked. His voice echoed strangely, like speaking through the air of a cathedral. "You chose compassion when survival demanded silence," the alpha answered, though its mouth did not move. "You changed the pattern." "The pup," he whispered. "That was the test." "The bond," came the reply. "Life recognizes life. When you lifted one of ours from the deep, the planet felt it. The world responded. You are not enemy." Rian looked down at his hands. The burns were gone, but faint silver lines traced across his skin, glowing softly before fading. "You healed me." "We adapted you," said the alpha. "The connection must balance. To protect this world, you must become part of it." He frowned. "I'm not here to stay. My species. Your kind burns worlds to ash and names it conquest." The sound rippled through the space like the deep toll of a bell. "Yet you did not. You fought beside us. You stood between life and greed. You acted as one of the guardians would." He wanted to argue, but the images that filled his mind stopped him. Fleets carving through atmospheres, orbital bombardments that sterilized entire biospheres. He'd seen it before, missions labeled salvage that were little more than planetary theft. He'd followed orders. Until now. "What happens if I go back?" The pup padded closer, pressing its head against his leg. Through the contact, he felt its thought, a simple, aching clarity. "They will return. More will come." Rian closed his eyes. "Then you're asking me to fight them?" The alpha lowered its head. "To stand with us. To speak when others come. They will listen to one of their own before they destroy what they do not understand." He thought of the mercenary ship burning in the lake, of how easily human greed had turned survival into invasion. He'd always believed himself small, a man lost between stars, but here, the weight of his choice stretched across an entire world. "Why me?" he whispered. "There are better men. There are no others here." A grim laugh escaped him, dry and hollow. "That's not fair. Life rarely is." The alpha's gaze softened, and its body began to dim, edges blurring into the air. The pack followed, one by one, until only faint outlines remained. "The bond remains," the voice murmured. "Through it you will speak for both. When they come, you will remember this light." The hum of the ground deepened, pulling at him, drawing him downward. The landscape wavered, dissolving into liquid brilliance. The pup looked back once before vanishing completely, and the light collapsed into darkness. When Rian opened his eyes again, he was back on the shore. The sky had shifted to dawn, soft gold bleeding into blue. The wreckage of the mercenary ship still smoked across the lake, but the wolves were gone. His visor lay cracked beside him, its systems dead except for a single flickering prompt. He touched it, and the display came alive for a moment, showing one final transmission, already queued. His own voice played softly over the static. "If they call us monsters, tell them I met gods instead." He didn't remember recording it. The beacon light blinked beside him, its signal steady and strong now, reaching toward the stars. Somewhere out there, a human ship would catch it. And with it, questions. Maybe another claim team. Maybe worse. He stood, testing his balance. The burns were gone, his strength renewed, yet something was different beneath his skin. The faint hum he'd heard in the wolves lingered faintly in his own pulse. The planet's resonance lived within him now. He could feel the rhythm of the soil beneath his boots, the slow breath of the lake behind him, the whisper of life moving in harmony just beyond human hearing. For the first time in years, he didn't feel alone. He looked to the treeline. In the soft morning haze, faint lights shimmered, dozens of eyes watching silently from the shadows. They did not approach, but they did not retreat. Guardians waiting. Protectors observing. Allies. He slung his rifle over his shoulder, though he knew he'd never fire it again. "All right," he murmured into the quiet. "If they come, I'll be ready." The eyes blinked once in unison, as if acknowledging his words. Then the forest swallowed them whole. Rian walked back toward the wreckage, sunlight rising behind him. His shadows stretched long across the sand, intersecting the trails of massive paw prints that led into the woods. Above, the stars shimmered faintly through the thinning clouds. Somewhere among them, a fleet would receive his transmission and set a course for Castor 9. But when they arrived, they would not find a broken man waiting for rescue. They would find the planet's chosen standing where the line between human and guardian had vanished. The breeze shifted, carrying a low, familiar hum across the lake, the sound of the wolves, of the planet, of something vast and alive. Rian closed his eyes, letting it pass through him. The rhythm matched his heartbeat perfectly. He smiled faintly. "I hear you," he whispered, "and I'll make them listen." The lake shimmered once, light spreading across the surface like a heartbeat echoing back in answer. Then the sound faded, leaving only the whisper of waves against the shore and the certainty that the world, for the first time, was listening too.